Top officials here at the World Health Organization are meeting with diplomats from member countries to map out a response to U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to pull out of the UN Health Agency. The United States is WHO's top donor and was set to give about $1 billion for the 2024-2025 budget cycle. The AP obtained recordings of closed-door meetings where the head of the World Health Organization pleaded with member countries to urge the United States to reconsider its decision. Officials here say that the loss of American funding will especially hit programs in places like Ukraine, the Middle East, and Sudan, as well as long-term U.S.-funded projects to eradicate diseases like HIV, polio, and hepatitis. The Trump administration has accused WHO of mishandling the COVID crisis, failing to enact needed reforms, and demanding too much money of U.S. taxpayers. In the recordings, WHO officials rejected that and said that the United States is not just leaving WHO, but abandoning the global community.
Yeah, let's go to North Queensland. Strength and love to everyone who is dealing with things, particularly around Townsville. It does go a little higher, it does go a little lower, it does go further inland. I'll have more to say about that in a moment. As you can see, the images coming from the area, it is incredibly difficult. You can see what was and what is right now. You can see the types of things that people are responding to, and they are responding to with the resilience that Australians always have in these scenarios. I thank any person who is part of a surging army of volunteers that are taking care of strangers or the neighbours that are taking care of each other. I love seeing the images of people in high pubs that are a little higher in the ground, and even with water lapping at their ankles, they're still serving the beers and cooking up the sausages, trying to make sure the people who are taking care of everyone else is fed and appropriately hydrated. But this is the situation. There are 6 evacuation centres up and down the areas most affected. 400 people are in them right now. Now, the rain, well, as we know, the best part of a metre, in fact, 1.2 metres of rain has fallen the past 24 hours in parts of this area, which means that while the rain may subside from the intensity of the past couple of days, the rain that's a little uphill, a little further in, is going to start heading your way, which means floodwaters can continue to rise. So please, even if you're an old-timer who's seen it all before, please leave when they tell you to. I get it. You would prefer to be in a scenario where there's an overreaction than you having to wait to the very last minute to be pulled to safety in a dinghy where no one knows what's underneath it, or being pulled off your roof after a long time by a helicopter. Our mates in Charters Towers. I love Charters Towers, beautiful country town, hour, 90 minutes in from Townsville. Shout out to Steve and everyone, particularly at the drive-in. You know how much I love that place. Well, drinking water is disrupted as a result of things that are happening here. So people are being told, please boil water if you can, bottle it, but do not drink the water as it currently is. So just an example where our focus might be, say, on the bigger city. There's stuff that's happening in towns and even further out on farms all over the place. Here are some of the people having to deal with it. I make this the lead story tonight because it is the most important thing in the world to these people and those of us in Australia who love them.
Jump out, mate! Jump out!
The windows!
Jump!
Frightening, and then moments where people are taking care of each other. If there aren't people around, then the capacity for you to be taken care of. That's how serious it is. I get it. You've seen it before. It goes high, it goes low, this year, that year, all the rest of it, right? I get that these days there are more warnings and more warning sirens screaming on your radio, and it might sometimes feel like overkill, but I'm telling you, if they tell you to move, please move. If you've got family that won't move, please convince them to move, because we love them and we want them to be around, okay? I prefer overreaction than an under-preparedness here. As for the officials, here's the latest they're telling us.
We have not seen the peak of that flood. It is expected in the early hours of tomorrow. So areas of that low-lying black zone area are still expected to receive inundation.
Part of the job of every Premier, but in particular the Queensland Premier, is to respond to natural disasters like this. For David Crucifulli, it is his first as Premier.
We're urging residents to please listen to the advice and stay in contact with communications. Please don't go back to those homes because the modelling is showing that the water could continue to rise. It's been an amazingly monsoonal event.
As always, 24/7 Sky News has our website with the latest information, rolling blogs, all the rest of it, but also we have our weather channel. Here's a little explanation about where we are and where we go in the next 24 hours.
Multiple locations receiving a month's worth of rain in one day. Others, like Mount Sophia, have seen more than a metre of rain in the past week. The Herbert River is now finally falling. The concern moving forward, though, for a number of these rivers, especially the Ross River, which feeds into suburban Townsville, is that there are significant downpours forecast at a minimum across both Tuesday and Wednesday.
Wild stuff. Be safe. Please be safe. Take care of everyone, no matter whether you've been through it for your first time or this is your 100th time of doing it, because that's part of the life in North Queensland. Again, everyone in the Grampians in Victoria, I'm aware of the bushfire situation, and all of what I've just said applies to you too, even though the danger is of a completely different element. But strength and love to everyone dealing with it, and thank you to everyone who has helped.
Charity beginning at home. Remember when Donald Trump, after his inauguration, went to a national prayer service at an Episcopalian church and the bishop, Marion Budd, gave him this treatment?
The people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labour in poultry farms and meatpacking plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation. But the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals.
Yes, remember that. And the faces of Trump and Melania and JD Vance as they listen to all this go on, and she goes on about how transgender people are fearing for their lives now in Trump's America, was all quite odd. And you'll remember that Trump responded afterwards. He said the so-called bishop who spoke at the National Prayer Service on Tuesday morning was a radical left hardline Trump hater. She brought her church into the world of politics in a very ungracious way. She was nasty in tone and not compelling or smart. She failed to mention the large number of illegal immigrants that came into our country and killed people. Many were deposited from jails and mental institutions. It is a giant crime wave that is taking place in the USA. Apart from her inappropriate statements, the service was a very boring and uninspiring one. She is not very good at her job. She and her church owe the public an apology. Well, they certainly owe the public an apology, but I think they also owe the public a fair deal of thanks, because we now know why she went so hard on Donald Trump in that sermon. It's because her church made $53 million out of the Biden administration to resettle migrants in America under programs that Trump has now paused. So this wasn't her genuinely standing there saying, I'm so worried about the state of the world and I'm saying this because I'm a Christian. I'm saying this because it lines the pockets of my church. And of course, at no point did she mention the fact that they got this $53 million to resettle 3,600 refugees in America last year. Sorry, that was 2023. Last year they had 6,400 people that they resettled in America, pocketing all this money through another arm they call the Episcopal Migration Ministry. Isn't it convenient, isn't it? The man walks in who's decided to cut off the flow of money because you're just making shed loads by getting a bunch of people to come over to America. I mean, that's a lot of money, $53 million for, a few thousand people. That's not a bad racket. He turns the tap off and all of a sudden, she's so worried about these migrants and these transgender people who are fearing for their lives. No, she was worried about the bottom line.
I don't know if you should be too critical, Caleb. I mean, Jesus said you can't serve God and money, but the bishop is going to give it a shot anyway. So the fact is they get this $53 million. This is not for providing anything for these refugees. This is simply connecting refugees with service providers.
Oh, my God.
So it's a pretty great job. And the American government, they pay for the airfares for these refugees to arrive in the US. if these refugees end up paying back the government the cost of the airfares, the Episcopalian Church gets 25% of the airfares as a bonus for helping these people settle well. So clearly this bishop had a massive conflict of interest, which was not shared from the pulpit. If the church want to help the poor, then the church should help the poor and foot the bill themselves. But you can't be claiming to be the church helping the poor when you're expecting the taxpayer to put the hand in their pocket and do it. Anyway, this bishop has clearly ruined the Episcopalian Church, and now she's trying to ruin the country.
But when you consider they got $53 million to settle 3,600, and like you say, not actually settle them, just connect them with the organisations who will settle them.
Yeah.
And the article says we don't know the figure for last year. That is 2023's figure. We don't know the 2024 figure. But they settled almost double the people last year. So you can imagine we're probably talking in the vicinity of well over $100 million last year. So she is seeing a lot of shiggy walk out the door, and she's very unhappy about it. But what she thought she was going to achieve by berating a brand new president, which got overwhelmingly the popular vote, this guy is Mr. Everyone wanted him. OK, there's no denying that. And she thought instead of uniting Americans, who a lot of them are Bible believers and would have tuned in and been like, yes, this is the national prayer service, instead of uniting Americans and giving a powerful message that everyone could get behind, she basically picked out the entire Trump campaign's main bastions of what they'd campaigned on and begged him not to do it. All the LGBTIQ stuff as well as the refugee stuff. I mean, talk about screaming into a pillow.
I mean, who would have thought that bullying Donald Trump is not the best way to get the man to change his mind? Like, I'm not sure she has much political smarts, this lady.
Thousands of Egyptians gathered at the Rafah crossing on Friday to protest US President Donald Trump's proposal to relocate Palestinians from Gaza to Egypt and Jordan. Waving Egyptian and Palestinian flags, protesters voiced support for an independent Palestinian state. Both Egypt and Jordan have firmly rejected the proposal. I just want to say to the other side that the entire Egyptian people stand behind the political leadership, no to displacement. I want to say one thing: all Arab countries should follow the example of Egypt and Jordan. It is not clear if Trump will force Egypt or Jordan to agree, but he has in his first days in office and on campaign threatened hefty tariffs against American allies to get his way.
In 2025, Saudi Arabia will implement enhanced health protocols for Umrah pilgrims, mandating vaccinations to protect public health and safety for millions of attendees. The Saudi Civil Aviation Authority has announced that pilgrims must be vaccinated against meningococcal meningitis, polio, yellow fever, COVID-19 and seasonal influenza. Additionally, all international visitors are required to have the meningitis vaccine, while those coming from polio-endemic countries like Pakistan, Nigeria and Afghanistan must also receive the polio vaccine. Pilgrims arriving from Angola, Nigeria, Brazil and Congo will need to be vaccinated against yellow fever, COVID and flu vaccinations, as recommended by World Health Organization, are now compulsory. It is also advised that pilgrims complete vaccinations for tetanus, measles and other diseases.
Government is hopeful that we will run out of faith, which is wrong, of course. They're mistaken, because I believe the Georgian society, and I'd like to call it New Georgian society, society that has already made a decision that we want new kind of state. We want a value-based state, and we share these values, and this is visible how we stand here on Rustaveli Avenue and in everything that we do. Protest is not only here. Protest has reached every every city of this nation and every corner of our social, political and cultural life.
Now to the new tariffs ordered by President Donald Trump on Mexico, Canada, and China, and set to go into effect on Tuesday. White House correspondent Yamisha Alcindor has more on the backlash and the retaliation underway.
Tonight, President Trump's new tariffs blasted by foreign leaders and Democrats here at home.
It's going to just do one thing. It will raise prices for American consumers.
Even as Republicans rush to the president's defense for imposing 25% tariffs on goods from Mexico and Canada and 10% on items from China.
If prices go up, it's because of other people's reactions to America's laws.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau retaliating with his own 25% tariffs on U.S. imports and speaking directly to the American people.
Tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk. They will raise costs for you, including food at the grocery store, gas at the pump.
And it's getting personal. Last night in an NHL hockey game in Ottawa, Canadian fans booed the singing of the U.S. national anthem. This morning, President Trump writing on social media that Canada should become our cherished 51st state. The president, who campaigned on promises of lowering costs for Americans, also acknowledging prices could go up, posting, "Will there be some pain? Yes, maybe," adding it will all be worth the price that must be paid. White House officials said the tariffs will help with border security and accused Mexico of having an alliance with drug traffickers. Mexico's president pushing back, saying we categorically reject the White House's slander against the Mexican government of having alliances with criminal organizations. Mexico also says it will now implement its own new tariffs on the U.S. And China says it's going to file a lawsuit with the World Trade Organization and take countermeasures of its own.
And these tariffs that target America's top 3 trade partners account for 42% of all goods imported into the U.S.
New tariffs on imports from Mexico, Canada, and China are set to take effect this week.
President Donald Trump signed an executive order this weekend, but there are a lot of questions about the potential fallout. CBS 17's Sana Cabargo takes a look at how this could impact our wallets.
But yeah, I could see the consumer having to eat some costs up front, so we'll see.
Shoppers out for groceries Sunday night thinking about how new tariffs could impact their bill. President Trump announced 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada and 10% on imports from China. The president said on social media the move is an effort to pressure the countries to crack down on the export of fentanyl and for Canada and Mexico to reduce illegal immigration into the U.S. Economic experts say the tariffs could make inflation worse, raising prices on all kinds of goods.
Washing machines, dishwashers, TVs, automobiles, all of those things are going to be subject to this 25% either Canada or Mexico tariff. And those prices are going to go up significantly.
Shopper Cam Blizzard says he hopes it's not too bad, but he's not that concerned.
I mean, things have been pretty pricey noticeably over the last few years.
And groceries aren't what he's worried about.
No, I mean, my problem is like if I'm going to the grocery store, that's me being a responsible spender usually. Cutting back on other things, eating out and that sort of thing in general.
Both Mexico and Canada announced their own tariffs on U.S. imports in response. The new tariffs will take effect this Tuesday. Sana Cabargo, CBS 17 News.
And digging deeper tonight, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he will put 25% tariffs on up to $155 billion on goods, including alcohol and fruit. On social media, President Trump wrote the tariffs are necessary to protect Americans in an effort to address illegal immigration and drug trafficking.
This is retaliatory to a certain extent. Millions of people flowed into our country through Mexico and Canada, and we're not going to allow that.
In addition, energy imported to the U.S. from Canada, including oil, natural gas, and electricity, would be taxed at a rate of 10% under the Trump tariffs.
New tariffs on several U.S. trade partners, how much you could pay and when.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Sydney Charles. Over the weekend, President Donald Trump slapped tariffs on imported goods. KC24's Jennifer Zucker joins us live in studio now after speaking with a financial advisor. Jennifer, how could the new tariffs affect local consumers?
Well, Sydney, nearly 30% of all imports to the United States come from Canada and Mexico. I spoke with a local expert who says people may expect to see some higher prices for items at the grocery store and at the pump. President Donald Trump signed an order that imposes a 10% tariff rate on all imports from China and 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada. The exception being a 10% rate on Canadian oil. The president says the tariffs aim to combat illegal immigration and the tide of fentanyl. He adds they are being imposed because the United States has a trade deficit with the three countries.
He has said that we're going to have tariffs, and in his own words, we're going to feel a little bit of pain.
But some consumers and economists are concerned that tariffs could raise prices of goods and services. Brian Ullman, financial advisor with the Ford Financial Group, says the cost of groceries, gas, energy, and cars could rise.
The reality is it's probably going to be, if these tariffs stay in place, going to be more expensive 6 months from now than they are today.
Ullman also says car dealerships may also be hit.
If they're not fully assembled in Mexico, parts are manufactured there and they're crossing the border back and forth. And so the car you want may not be available. The car you want may be more expensive than it was just a few weeks ago.
But Ullman says the bigger question is, how will the steep new tariffs affect the economy?
If we have less economic activity because people aren't spending this kind of money, that's a problem.
The Central Valley produces about a quarter of the country's food. Ullman says tariffs could have a big impact locally.
With our economy being dependent heavily on agriculture, I think we'll probably see some effects of those.
And the tariffs are set to take effect on Tuesday. President Trump acknowledges that prices are going to rise, but that it is worth the trade-off in the administration's view. Live in the studio, I'm Jennifer Zucker, KC24, local news that matters.
We may have short-term a little pain, and people understand that, but long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world. We have deficits with almost every country, not every country, but almost. And we're going to change it. It's been unfair. That's why we owe $36 trillion. I'm speaking with Prime Minister Trudeau tomorrow morning, and I'm also speaking with Mexico tomorrow morning. And I don't expect anything very dramatic. We put tariffs on. They owe us a lot of money, and I'm sure they're going to pay. They don't take our cars, they don't take our farm products, they take almost nothing. And we take everything from them, millions of cars, tremendous amounts of food and farm products. So the UK is way out of line, and we'll see the UK, but European Union is really out of line. UK is out of line, but I'm sure that one, I think that one can be worked out. But the European Union it's an atrocity, what they've done. Secretary of State Rubio is in Panama right now, and we're talking about the Panama Canal. What they've done is terrible. They violated the agreement. They're not allowed to violate the agreement. China's running the Panama Canal. That was not given to China. That was given to Panama foolishly, but they violated the agreement, and we're going to take it back, or something very powerful is going to happen. USAID, run by radical lunatics, and we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision.